And that's the American ideals, right?
Yeah.
Is to have the biggest tent possible and say, hey, you're Jewish, I'm Christian, you're atheist, whatever you are.
Yeah.
We can get behind these ideas that we're going to allow each other to flourish in our own way and to find out what is true and to exercise our freedoms and to do what we think is the best for our persons, right?
Right. Welcome to the Kevin Roberts Show. As you know, if you watch or listen regularly, each week we talk to someone who's making a difference in America. Some of those folks are thinkers, philosophers, historians like me. But what's really fun is to talk to someone who's also a leader in business. And this week, it's a great privilege to sit down with my friend from Texas, Peter Rex. Pete, thanks for being here.
Kevin, good to be here.
So you have made a lot of waves, and that's because you're not a shrinking violet. I think most people who watch or listen to this show know who you are, but perhaps they're not exactly familiar. So tell us why you moved to Texas. Just a little bit of a story there. We're going to get into some of the details over the next bit.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, we were in the West Coast. I had moved out there to San Francisco, built out technology, started to break into the technology ecosystem in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Then I moved up to Seattle, set up another office in Seattle, and kept doing that. But along the way, I realized, sort of triggered by COVID, the opportunity to act upon this. But it was a growing realization that the West Coast, particularly San Francisco and Seattle, was becoming increasingly intolerant. And that was not a good environment to draw from a talent base.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best environment for myself. I have 4 kids. And when I met my wife, and I, we always think about these things, right? As do you,
Yeah.
And every good parent, right? But also parents in my company were bringing it up to me as well. They were worried about the local environment, the schools, the other, sort of growing intolerance towards, people with Judeo-Christian principles.
Yeah. And I think when people, as I've talked to probably several dozen people about the witness that you've provided as someone who is an objective thinker, you have your own particular philosophy when it comes to politics and your worldview. But the point I'm driving at, Pete, is you don't impose that on your employees. You're just trying to create a situation where people are free to exercise their political beliefs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I like to say is everything is tolerated within our company, except for intolerance. So, I mean, you can accept, pretty much, and that's the American ideals, right?
Yeah.
Is to have the biggest tent possible and say, hey, you're Jewish, I'm Christian, you're atheist, whatever you are.
Yeah.
We can get behind these ideas that we're going to allow each other to flourish in our own way and to find out what is true and to exercise our freedoms and to do what we think is the best for our persons, right?
Right.
So this is the foundation of American ideal, the American system, really. And that's something I embrace and that my ancestors I've benefited from tremendously. And we try to do the same thing within our company.
Yeah.
But you can't allow someone in there that says, actually, my way, this way of thinking is the only way. And if you don't think this, we're going to cancel you.
Right.
We're going to put a target on your back. We're going to make it, basically uncomfortable to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
one thing I'm curious about, and I have been since we started talking and spending time together over the last couple of years, was that realization, the thing you just explained, was that something that was a light bulb moment, or was it something that sort of evolved over a period of time?
Well, so I would say it was a evolving, situation.
Yeah, sure.
So, I could go back and, back my history a little bit. I'm originally from the New York area, New York City area, upstate New York, which would be about an hour and a half north of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And grew up in a, middle class, working class type family.
Right.
But as I went into college, I first started at community college, but then I transferred eventually to a place called Ave Maria.
Mm-hmm.
And then last I transferred to Georgetown University. Mm-hmm. And when I was at Georgetown, that's where I'd say I started having a light bulb realization of the intolerance.
Yeah.
And sort of the, how much of an echo chamber some of these folks were in. Because I remember having pretty much a confrontational meeting with one of the heads of Georgetown.
Yeah.
And
confrontation?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But it was caught me off guard because they were confronting me. And I said, well, wait, first of all, aren't you a Catholic priest? And then secondly, like, why are you giving me problems about my positions and my points of view? And,
right.
These are very commonly accepted views anyways in America. And the guy said, well, do you realize, like, you're just so conservative? And I said, I'm so conservative? Like, I had never identified as conservative, actually. And I always thought about, even my family, to seek truth, whatever that is, and to have open debates. So whoever, my parents would always my dad particularly keep me around whenever he's debating anybody, even stuff against his own positions, because he wants to hear the different sides, right? That's how you come to the truth. So I was like, oh, well, I'm conservative? I said, well, but you're the one with the collar on, my friend.
Yeah,
you know, he's got a Roman collar. He's a priest.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, why would you become like a Catholic priest and then actually, you know, go against all the positions of the church?
Yeah.
And so, but that sort of gave me an understanding of, wow, these guys are fairly out of it. I mean, because if he went even to, you know, where I grew up and he talks to folks on the street, or I used to work construction as well before I went to Georgetown. If you talk to some of those guys, he'll realize like he'll probably end up thinking they're conservative, but actually they're not. They're just Americans. They're regular folks. They're more moderate, I'd say. And I think the university system became so far left. And this kind of fed into what I would say is the current problem in the technology ecosystem is the university feeder system, sort of teaching people what to believe or forcing, you know, through pressure, what to believe rather than how to challenge their own belief system through thinking, through reasoning.
Right.
And that key difference has led to, I think, somewhat of a radicalization and an echo chamber. And then you come out of that feeder system, you land in a company that's also similar and also somewhat radicalized without realizing it. So now everything you know is sort of like this. You probably think you're a moderate, but you're in the middle of a lot of folks.
You're in this bubble, right?
Yeah, you're around a lot of folks that are actually pretty far off. And it's also not grounded. There's no tether. That's why sometimes I say I'm grounded in Judeo-Christian principles. I don't mean that it has to be Jewish or Christian. I'm citing timeless principles.
Right.
They don't have a tether. So when they say we have these values in our company, well, what is that tethered to? Is that tethered to stone or is that just floating in the ocean? So where is that going to go with the wind?
Yeah.
So if the zeitgeist, the wind of the times are bad, you know, who knows where they're going to go, right? They could be burning things or, you know, we've seen some of these activities and become extremely just whatever that would be. It's an empty vessel, essentially. They have no belief system is what I noticed. So they land there, then they end up in these radical cities like Seattle and San Francisco. And so anyway, so the feeder system, university, then boom, landing into a company, then boom, landing into a city that's sort of the poster child of radicalism as far as intolerance right now. Yeah. And so I don't even think they would identify as being intolerant. They probably think they are tolerant.
Yeah, because their whole bubble, to your point, not just probably at the university level, but starting even at the middle school level, unfortunately, when you think about what's happened with K through 12 schools, that bubble is replicated time and again, as you've described well. And they become, in ways they don't understand, even more intolerant because there's no one to challenge them. It's a real tragedy, especially if you think about the timeless principles on which our country was founded. Neither liberal nor conservative in sort of a general sense. It is ultimately conservative in ways we might talk about. But let's get back to your story. And so you're at Georgetown, you finish there, you have this interesting conversation with a priest friend who's in his bubble, and eventually you start a very successful business. What's the business for people who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah. So, well, right now what I'm doing is I'm in the technology industry. So I have 10 technology companies I've, funded, financed, built out over time. And those are all early stage companies. And, we've gone all in. A lot of the folks in our company have moved across the country to join the company, or moved with us from San Francisco to Seattle and then now over to Austin. And so, and that's all focused on the technology area, but historically, when I go reversing back to when I first got into business, into entrepreneurship, it was sort of, I backed into it as somewhat of a last resort, something I hadn't considered. In college, I never thought about business, actually. Never read anything about business. Wasn't interested at all. Sort of considered, business folks to be a little bit on the, just kind of like.
Oh, just say it.
Yeah, just not really into anything like mission oriented, not really.
Yeah, got it.
I have some words for it, but probably inappropriate for the podcast. But
fair enough.
But
I tried to egg you on, but
we'll
stop there.
You don't even have to. But but basically, for whatever reason, I just had no interest. You could have told me Bill Gates outside your apartment during college, and I said, cool, not going to be.
You weren't starstruck by
don't care
at
all.
That's right.
But coming out, I had sort of tried different things. I thought, well, maybe I'm called to actually go to mission work or priesthood or something like that. But I realized, that's not going to work for me. There's a little thing called obedience, and I don't really have that. So
this is a theme already in this conversation.
Yeah. So then I get out, and I'm thinking, well, maybe when I went to Georgetown Religion, I thought maybe I get into politics, some public service of some sort. But I just don't really. I don't dig that. That's for obviously I'm glad that people are over there doing that, but that's not for me.
Right.
And so then I say, I realized that I don't take to authority really well. I'm much better on my own, doing my own thing. And then I sort of had this epiphany that to go into business, which I almost kind of thought was could be something like a bad thought, like, well, being a Christian, like, oh, I'm going to go into business. That's bad money, But then I had worked that through. I actually spent a couple of weeks at a monastery in total silence. There's a Maronite monastery in the middle of nowhere in Petersham, Massachusetts. I spent 2 weeks over there in silence, praying on it. And I realized, like, okay, this is a consistent thing to go into entrepreneurship. So that's how I launched it. And I didn't know anything about business, but I did know how to read. So I had done philosophy, political philosophy, sort of a Straussian way to educate yourself.
Right.
And so I was able to, use a lot of interlibrary loan system books. It sounds, it sounds kind of crazy to
Hey man,
people.
you're talking to a historian. This is my language.
Yeah. So I would order so many books in. I had to use like 4 different libraries in New York because the librarians would get mad about how many books I was ordering. So I'd get them from different libraries and I just worked through and eventually came up with a plan how to get in to business. And I came through the real estate side because you can buy larger assets.
Right.
So fast forwarding then, over time, in the interim, I ended up fast forwarding, I bought a few $1 billion of assets in real estate, particularly making a strong bet on a contrarian bet during the great financial crisis to buy up a lot of assets in Texas and Florida because I thought those would be good areas long term.
Right.
So in the interim during that, I also did a CPA and did a law degree at Harvard. So that's kind of my quick story. I noticed along the way a lot of problems within technology in real estate, how bad it was, but I saw that as a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's how I got myself into the technology industry. So I'm kind of condensing a lot into one quick thing, but
it all is very clear.
When I made that decision to go into technology, though, I made it with a lot of thinking, really reflection, whether this is a good idea or not. I wanted to have a huge global impact with whatever I did in business because I'm all about mission over, anything else.
Yeah.
But part of being in business is part of the mission is you have to make as much money as possible.
Right.
To further the agenda of the mission. Obviously grounded in virtue as well and about serving people through the business side. Yeah. But I went to like 85 countries straight on an 18-month tour, basically, where I hit all these countries. I had about 1,000 meetings, took a lot of notes, like 1,500 pages, single space notes, and mapped out a strategy of going into tech and building things out. And that was 2015, 16 or so. Yeah. When I did that. So that's kind of my quick story. So
from that last part of that story, this trip where you visited 85 countries, take 1,500 pages of single space notes, is it at that moment that you realized Austin, Texas was the place to go?
No, I was in the West Coast then. So I moved to San Francisco in 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
Landed there, started building out in tech. I picked San Francisco because there's so much tech there, so easy.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense.
Yeah, and I was able to use some of my earnings, my own cash, to get a lot of consulting. Yeah. So I'd get, best consultants in the world, hundreds of hours on every aspect of technology, architecture, product management, product design, how to do everything you can think of around building a technology product. Yeah. And getting the best consultants one-on-one and just mapping it out on a whiteboard, hours and hours and hours of this stuff to really get a good foundation to understand, how to do this. And then I started building, going after a myriad of problems. And that over to, and then I went to Seattle because Amazon does technology very differently. Same with Microsoft, then San Francisco. Now they obviously both do it on a huge scale, trillions of dollars of scale here. The biggest companies in America are tech companies. And they come out of only 2 spots, Seattle, San Francisco. That's it. So, and it's because tech is tremendously profitable. So, but trying to understand that, getting my head around that is why I went to Seattle, because they just do it so differently.
Would you explain that for this layman? I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are curious about that. Yeah. The difference in how tech is done between Seattle and San Francisco.
Yeah. So, I'll give you a quick, and I don't even think San Francisco understands it.
Interesting.
And I don't think Seattle really knows too much, like what's the difference actually.
Yeah, okay.
Because either side doesn't quite, they are very similar, but they do things very differently. Yeah. So I would say San Francisco has an ecosystem, but the way it operates is simply that you have a huge venture capital. So you have most of the money out there that's going through venture capital funds. Yeah. That's mostly in San Francisco, the Palo Alto, Silicon Valley region, right? It's all kind of the same. That ecosystem has caused, the money they deploy creates a lot of opportunities for startups, which then attracts a lot of talent, which then has attracted other things like accelerators, like they call it accelerators, things that help to spin up companies faster. Okay. Take a company that's already spun up, but then make it go faster and get bigger. Yeah. Help give them all the tools, the knowledge they need to grow huge, like Y Combinator is one of them. So you have this whole growth and ecosystem, sort of an agglomeration of different things around technology in San Francisco, the money side being the venture capital funds, who are, kind of, I call them the house in gambling. They're sort of the house always wins. The VCs always win. They generally not really losing. Yeah. Now these entrepreneurs that they call them, because a lot of them are not really, the most impressive entrepreneurs from understanding total business,
right?
But they understand a specific piece of tech.
Got it.
They will receive funding from these VCs, or seed capital, angel fund type groups, right? They'll get the capital, they'll deploy it, but a lot of the strategic thinking, a lot of the higher level thinking is provided by the venture capitalists themselves.
Yeah,
that's sort of San Francisco. So you just have like a huge gambling house. A lot of these entrepreneurs in there. Most of them don't win, they lose, but the VCs win. And in general, the total net pie continues to grow. That's kind of San Francisco. And then you go up to, and then out of there, you have huge companies that just grew out because they hit market. Because when you hit market in tech, it's massively profitable.
Yeah.
Because it scales infinitely. It's like if you could, sell this bottle of water, you create the bottle of water. It's a great bottle of water, but you don't have to create 1 million of them. You can just create this one bottle of water and sell it 1 million times. That's a huge difference. Yeah. You don't got to keep buying more plastic. You just sell this one thing 1 million times rather than create 1 million bottles.
Yeah.
So that's basically what tech's able to do.
Okay.
Then you go up to Seattle. What's the difference up there? Well, Seattle's origins come from Boeing, which is kind of like, was basically a monopoly at one point that had to get broken up, but a great ecosystem of engineering up there. And on top of Boeing later on, or following Boeing, came Microsoft, which probably drew a lot from that ecosystem. And University of Washington's up there, so feeding a lot of talent. Yeah. So Microsoft really, created a massive technology birthing ecosystem out of there, but that came from big company, more or less, from one company, top down, rather than a huge gambling system like San Francisco. Yeah. So the way they drive tech will be a lot more, of a plan, opportunity. This is a good opportunity, and then they'll come at it from different angles trying to hit it, but they'll come at it through usually company funded attacks. Yeah. And you can see that with Amazon, who's also up in Seattle. They have Alexa, they have AWS, they have all these companies, all were internally created. Yeah. So even
Microsoft, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, very big difference. It's kind of, the top down execution approach versus the gambling approach of Seattle, of San Francisco.
Yeah. And so you then pull up your roots in Seattle, you set your eyes on Austin. Tell us why Austin.
Yeah, so I had a good understanding of the world, so I knew we wanted to be in America. America, you look, for all the faults of America, it's still the best country. Yeah. I mean, for the size of the economy, the diversity of our abilities to, geographic diversity, people diversity, a lot of things are great here. And it's the best place to be. That's why I chose to stay here. Now, we could go anywhere, right? Yeah. So we stayed, so America, that was an obvious choice for me. I've seen a lot of countries, and there's a lot of great countries, but America is special. Yeah. And we still are special. I mean, you look at China, what just happened in China, a lot of people are big China fans. Yeah. For example, a friend of mine that I'm, connected in when I was in Shanghai, he's a guy who went to Harvard as well. And he was in love with China when I was there. So I couldn't even make any critiques. He'd be like, oh, come on, don't say that. Even up and through COVID, he was still in love with them. And I said, I thought, man, this is like real infatuation almost. Yeah. You're not thinking. Yeah. So, but anyways, now he's back in the States. I just talked to him a few weeks ago, and he absolutely hates China now. And I said, well, what happened? He said, man, it's like I fell in love with this woman. I thought she was perfect and all this other stuff. And it turns out she's a meth head, crazy psycho that wants to kill me and take my children.
What a story!
Because during the lockdown, him and his wife were worried they're going to take their kid. Yeah, because of COVID or something. It's a 2-year-old child.
And this is not an unreasonable fear.
No. He said people were getting pulled out of the building and stuff. They were coming in, forced testing, and he just realized, wow. So I mean, for all the faults of America, we're still a great country. Yeah, and it's great. We're so blessed to be in America. So, but anyway, so I knew America was the choice. Within America, I said, okay, let's pick a ground where we have good ecosystem. Good environment, good feeder system of talent around me, because talent's going to be key. Yeah. I got to be able to either get it locally, preferably get it locally, and then attract people to it. So it can't be a place that's like, podunk, like, I don't know, some place, I don't want to offend people, but podunk, North Dakota.
I won't egg you on.
Yeah,
there you go.
All right, I just did. All right, whatever. There's not too many people from North Dakota, but there's good people in North Dakota, and they got great fracking going on over there.
That's right.
In Williston. But anyways, the bottom line is you get a place where if I tell someone, hey, it's over here, it's attractive, right? Yeah. So Austin sells well. So that's an attractive thing. Texas, though, surrounds Austin. 95% of Texans are not in Austin. They surround Austin. Yeah. And it's still the capital of Texas. So even if it is, a lot of people say, oh, it's so liberal, this and that. But first of all, it's Texas liberal. It's not the same. Yeah.
So, it's not Seattle.
No. People got gun safes and stuff. And they're not, they may be like, identify as liberal, but they're not that liberal. They're pretty cool still. Yeah. They're not like crazy, So, and on top of that, you're still surrounded by 95% of Texans who have a very strong civic virtue. Because I've been all over Texas. I've been also all over the country. But I've been to almost every part of Texas. And you can just see a consistent thickness in the culture. Yeah. That will not change for 100 years. Like that's so hard to build. It's just once you get it, it's hard to lose it. They have that. And I can benefit from that by building my company out of Texas. Yeah.
Well, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth highlighting for the audience that, especially those who understand this mystique about Texas, perhaps they find it's a little insulting to them as non-Texans. But for you and me, we consider ourselves adopted Texans, that it doesn't matter where you go in the state. That this is the point. That this is a state that is as diverse ethnically, religiously as California. And yet that thickness of that culture, as you put it, this civic virtue, which often comes across as Texas pride or Texas bravado, it is invariable from big city to small city, from the Rio Grande Valley, obviously predominantly Hispanic, to West Texas, to the Panhandle. And ultimately, there may be a lesson there for the future of America. But I think it's really important for people who have scratched their heads about you're moving to Austin, and they're scratching their heads because they know Austin is more liberal than the rest of Texas, to understand it's still Texas. And it's probably been rather easy for you to attract talent there.
Yeah, I mean, Austin sells well. It's got great music.
It really is a great city.
You know, so the and it's always a plurality of factors when you decide anything, because it's based on your strategy, right?
Right.
But when I thought about the opportunity to move the company, because during COVID, when COVID first hit, it was in May. Mm-hmm. When it first hit, we did an oil trade that was a very aggressive trade during March, when Putin got in dispute with Saudi Arabia. Yeah. We did pretty aggressive trade, and that was a huge win for the company. In May, though, we sold out of positions, and then I thought, what else can we do here?
Yeah.
And I said, man, what's unique about this is no one's going to school, which means I can possibly move the company easier, because that's the biggest limiting problem, right?
Yeah.
You know, spouse, like people don't want to move the kids in the middle of schooling, or if the kids are at a great school, they don't want to do it. But they already announced in Seattle the whole next year will be canceled.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, that's an opportunity. And I'd already been thinking about maybe we do move the company at some point. So because I'd been seeing these things, I thought the pendulum would swing the other way in the West Coast, actually, at first.
Yeah.
So I was wrong about that, but I wasn't so convicted on it that I couldn't be dissuaded. Mm-hmm. And I never am anyways. I always have a strong position, but I'm willing to change.
You're really willing to look at the other side.
Yeah. Hear it out. So I thought about it, and I said, well, this pendulum keeps going the wrong way. You know, how much worse can it get? Is it going to come the other way now towards more moderation? And I think over history, people make the mistake to think that things can't get worse. Yeah. Because sometimes when things get worse, they then come back and they get better. But sometimes things continue to get worse. I mean, Cuba's been the way it has been since the, 50s or whatever, the 60s under Castro, right? So, and if you go to Cuba, which I've been, I mean, you'd be driving cars that are like, made in the 60s. Yeah, it's bonkers. It's like things could go sideways. They could also go worse, right? Yeah. The Roman Empire, right, in the 300s, like they thought, okay, Rome, the great Rome, it can't go down. It turned out it just started crumbling from within. And then all of a sudden, barbarians, Attila, these people just crushed it, So it's like,
it could happen.
What is going on? Barbarians are coming into Rome, so, but, so I think things could just go, a lot of people think, oh, this can't, and so, it could keep going, and I'm going to have to bet the company future and all my work. And, one of the phrases that comes from the gospel in my mind, but it's a nuance of it, it says, what profit has a man to gain the whole world, but to lose his soul in the process? And, what profit do I get as a business guy, right? As an entrepreneur, I build a company, but I lose the soul of the company in 30 years.
Yep.
Because the employees are psychopaths. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they hate my Christianity. They hate like American freedoms. They hate all that stuff because they're like, they've gone crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, we could try to convince them not to be crazy, or I could just say, I'm out. I'm not going to take that risk. I'm going to build this in a place that I feel that I'm on more solid ground.
Yeah. And so Texas has afforded you that opportunity. So you've got more than a couple of phrases that are catchy and really fascinating, but we'll key in on a couple of them. The first is your concept of new tech ecosystem. Explain what that is. I know that you've touched on this, but for the audience, for them to understand, what I would argue is, even though you are a modest guy at your core, a real contribution to American business right now, this concept of the new tech ecosystem.
Yeah. And I'm actually not very modest, actually. But
you're more modest. You're more modest than some people think.
Yeah. I mean,
how about that?
Oh, well,
for a New Yorker.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Kevin, I try to have humility. And
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. Humility.
So this is learned.
I prize humility. I don't prize modesty. I think modesty is good. It's been a butchered virtue where people now are like, oh, I'm modest. I'm a Christian. Go high. It's like, what are you doing?
I knew I could egg you on. This is great.
Yeah. So, but what was the thing that you asked me that?
I don't even remember, man. Come on. New tech ecosystem.
Yeah. So bottom line is this, right? I don't like to, complain and be a baby about stuff and whine, right? Unless I'm going to go do something. So I started seeing these issues with tech. I started seeing, worse and worse stuff happening. Didn't surprise. I mean, well, some things didn't surprise me. Some things did. I was surprised about the boldness in which they used their power to basically manipulate things. Coming into the election of the president, whether you like him or not, who cares? It's the sovereignty of the American people is at stake. That's what's at stake. It's not about actually whether you like some candidate or the other. So that's what the problem, right? If another country did this, what happened? We'd be at war with them, 100%. No question. It'd be a total war. And rightfully so, right? So, but we had the enemy usually is within. And the enemy now is tech. It's not big tech, it's all tech. All tech. That's the problem. And when I say I don't like to whine about stuff as I'm going to do it, I first like to diagnose the problem. That way people understand this is serious. Like, it's not just that they're going to stop you from expressing yourself and your freedom of speech on these accepted public forums like Twitter, Facebook, etc. It's not just that. They can also block your ability to manage and communicate your information and your data systems. That's Amazon, Microsoft, right? And I think we all know this now. They can also deplatform you off your mobile devices. They can also take your books down, which has happened to people that are legit. And I've talked to these folks. They're legit folks that are not crazy. And
like Ryan Anderson, our former Heritage colleague, is perhaps the best example.
These guys are legit guys who are good people, and they're not saying anything violent. They're just standing up for Judeo-Christian principles or American ideals, whatever you want to call it. And they're being, their books are being taken down, whatever, from what is currently the accepted system of how people shop and how they get their information. So this is a huge issue. But now we also have, why I say it's all tech, it's not big tech, because then you have GoFundMe with the truckers, right? They're not allowing funding to go in there. What is GoFundMe nonprofit? What are they getting involved? GoDaddy kicking off Texas Right to Life. Don't let them don't let them host their service on there. MailChimp, they blocked something to do with some Tea Party or whatever. I don't know. And these are all folks I grew up with. You know what I mean? These are these are American people, and they're getting blocked by these folks. So it's a serious issue. That's all tech. So that's the problem. The solution, though, is what I want to move towards. But you can't have a solution unless you know what your issue is. You have to identify the enemy and know how the bad problem is. How bad is it? What is the nature of it? So I think we understand that. So we have to create a new tech ecosystem. Bottom line, we need a new tech ecosystem. We need new tech leadership. New, that means not a morph of the old, like straight up new. We need something new. And what I'm doing is it's basically, and there's three things that need to go into that. One is you need new soil. So we're positioned out of Texas. That's part of it. And second is you need two legs to stand on. And the two legs you need to be able to stand on are talent. You need to get people stepping in, leaving the companies that they're at, these bad companies, and coming over to companies like ours that are good companies. You also need new talent coming out of these other schools like Hillsdale and some ones I respect. Like I went to Hillsdale and gave a talk up there because I was trying to, they're not paying me for this stuff. I'm up there trying to inspire kids to get into entrepreneurship and tech, right? Because particularly tech entrepreneurship because of how much influence it has, right? We need people that are thinkers coming in, right? So, and the second leg to stand on, absolutely critical, this will not work, is investors, capital. If we don't get capital, this thing is not going to work. I've put in well over 10 million in my own cash, more towards 20 or 30 million in my own cash to build this stuff out. So I'm all in, right? But I'm definitely going down if I don't have help. And same with our team. They've done tremendous sacrifice, the guys on my team. They moved across the country. Some of these people have 3, 4 kids. And they're just all in trying to build this stuff out because they are on board to create new tech leadership, to have an impact and create tech that empowers people and doesn't try to disempower them. So it's like, it sounds like simple stuff, but this is very serious stuff. And their spouses have made sacrifices as well. But we're going to lose unless we have capital and talent step up. And a lot of people with capital will be like, oh, I don't do tech, this and that, because a lot of conservatives are like this, right?
There's a real hostility.
But come on, conservatives are smart. Like, use your brain. Are guys in Silicon Valley smarter than you? Like, no, they're not. Trust me. Like, have a conversation. Talk about anything. Literature, history, philosophy, theology. You'll realize these guys don't know a damn thing about these things. Like, I don't know if they went to school sometimes, but no, they're smart people. They're good people. I have a lot of friends out there, But
let's be honest. Their civic knowledge is about that is really half an inch.
So I think for the conservatives, for libertarian type people that are not already in touch with these tech ecosystems, so they need to first acknowledge a fact: tech is the most profitable. Why? Look on the public stock markets. What are the $1 trillion companies out of the United States created? Apple. They're all tech companies. That's it. That's right. So they're all tech companies. That is what is created the most wealth. So that is like a fact. So why is that? And why are all these companies making so much money? It's because it's tremendously profitable to invest in early stage companies because you get this, what they call the power law. I'm going to quickly explain this so you get an understanding of it as well, because I think it's very important that people understand how you make money off this.
Yeah.
Because that you do make money, I think, is a fact. But how do you make money? Because then people, if they get scared, if they don't know how it works.
Right.
It's, first of all, it's very good to have a diversification strategy anyway. So you could have real estate, you have other stuff, but tech could be a diversification. You should have it. It should be. It has outperformed over time, right? But how do you think about it? Do you just bet on one company? No, you have to spread your bets. That's the nature of it. Yeah. You need about 10 companies. You need to spread your bets on 10 companies. I actually I've created, what we have is 10 companies. I did it partially to make sure I don't lose money and my investors don't lose money. Yeah. So it's long-term self-interest.
Yeah, sure.
I've never lost an investor's money and I'm not going to start. So I've spread it over 10. But if you look at financial history, generally 1 to 2 crush it out of 10. Yeah. And then, 3 or 4, whatever, do like okay. And then 2, some of them are just total duds and they blow out. They don't work at all. And it's hard to predict which ones because these are early stage tech. So it's hard to know what is the performance of this. Yeah. And there's a book on this. I think it's called The History of Venture Capital or something like that. There's a bunch of books that I've read on this. Not too many are good, but there's one that was okay. It was pretty good. I'd say it was good. And it goes back to the whaling days, same exact power law distribution models. Interesting. Follows the same exact pattern. So this stuff is like, the guys out in Silicon Valley that are investors, they understand this and they're making money, like crazy, right? Yeah. But we need the conservative groups, conservative folks to step in and to back companies like this because we need that money. Yeah. And we need the talent to step in as well. Because a lot of talent might be like, oh, how is this even going to work? I'm going to tech that's kind of scary. No, don't worry about it. You will figure it out. And you are smart. Get in there. Steve Jobs, he didn't have a technical background really. He was liberal arts background. Yeah.
People forget that.
Yeah. And not the most well-educated liberal arts, but still fairly okay, And he went in. A lot of leaders don't have technical backgrounds. Peter Thiel didn't have a technical background, philosophy background, I think, and then legal. And then a lot of folks he brought in also were similar in that aspect. So if you're trained how to think, you'll get your head around this and you will understand it and don't be scared of it. We need people jumping in. Yeah, it goes back to what you said. Remember that we know how to read. Yeah. And the ecosystem thing is if we don't get this ecosystem going, so you have this talent and capital, it will start to grow on itself and create an agglomeration that's separate and apart and different and new around tech. Yeah. And then it can compete and give an alternative to Silicon Valley. But you need to do that because the density, the talent in tech, the cutting edge talent is in these two areas, San Francisco and Seattle. So even when we're recruiting, we're pulling these folks from these places and moving them into our company. Thanks for that extended explanation, which is very good. And I'm sure our audience appreciates it. I want to have a couple questions before we wrap. And the next one is about this other phrase I've seen you use and seen you do some interviews, and it's servant capitalism. You and I, because of the faith we share, I think understand that. But I think it's something that could be broadly applied to the center right of the United States. We would like to think perhaps even folks left of center would accept that, but maybe that'll take some time. But just give us an understanding of what you mean when you use the phrase servant capitalism. Yeah, and what I'd say is, first of all, both the left and the right should accept it because it should be about what's true. It's not about what's on the left or what's on the right. That's right. So capitalism is certainly the best form. I think that, anybody who knows anything about history knows that it's the best form of wealth creation. Yeah. So capitalism certainly is the best form of wealth creation. Wealth creation is a good thing that's creating products and goods that can then be accessed by other people. That's a good thing. We are the stewards of the earth, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing. And the best system is capitalism. Okay. So boom, let's put that aside. Now, okay, is that good enough on its own? It's not good enough on its own. Right. And I've seen this in other countries. Yeah. And because what happens if you have capitalism, but you don't have the ethos of giving back, of basically to whom much is given, much is expected. If you don't have this in the underbed of the society, if you don't have civic virtue, if you're not grounded in virtue as a society, and you don't have this idea of being a servant, that's why I say my mission is to serve. I say serving Jesus, but I also say / or people. It's the same thing. Yeah, serving people in business. That's what I have to do. I have to serve. Yeah. If we don't have the idea of serving, then so if I get a lot of money, what am I going to do with this money? I'm going to go buy a bunch of yachts. No, what the hell? I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's about, there is something. There's more to it. When you become all consumption, there's definitely a problem. But generally when you get things that come to you, you have to figure out how can I invest this back into create things for other people? Yeah. That is so that's why I say servant capitalism. That is the only way forward. Yeah. Because otherwise, we either kill the wealth creation machine, which is going to cause everyone to become more impoverished, everybody, or we allow it to happen, but we don't have a servant mentality. We don't have that servant leadership happening. We don't have the civic virtue. If we don't have that, we will have rapacious capitalism. We'll have people, when they get their winnings, they get their earnings, they use it to protect their earnings and to basically lord over other folks. We're seeing this in the tech industry right now with some of the tech leaders. They use their money and their power to lord it over others. Rather than empowering folks and in allowing their voices to be heard, they try to silence them using their power.
Yeah.
So this is what I told rapacious capitalism. So actually, they're on the far left. They might say, "Oh, we're against capitalism." Yeah, right. Yeah. You are for capitalism. You're you're a tyrant.
Especially when
you're rapacious.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when they can be in collusion with big government, right?
Yeah,
that's one of the problems. So that's hopefully a good segue into the last question, which I've been real excited to ask you. I ask most of our guests, and it is, in spite of all the challenges that you see in America, why did you wake up this morning optimistic about America's future?
Yeah. So, I mean, but I would say a number of reasons I can get into, but let's put it like this. This is not the ninth inning, like we're about to lose. No, this is not anything. I mean,
seventh inning stretch.
We haven't even started the game.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, this thing ain't over at all. I'm telling you, it's not. Now, there's a lot of evidence of this, by the way. People are stepping up. They realize what's happening. It is far from over. However, if we don't do something, as you slip it further, it's harder to grab it.
Yeah.
So you got to move fast, and we got to move up and push against and fight back.
Yeah.
And we got to step up, get on the offense. Get offensive on things. Start moving, not offensive, but get on the offense. Yeah. But start moving and creating power structures that are actually going to be about causing people to flourish, about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing in my own company. So even the phenomenon, and I'm going to use the T word right now, which I call it the T word, Trump, is even with Trump, right? Historically, by the way, I'm not really into Trump that much historically, but anyways, but when you look at this, when I step back, I look at what's going on here. What you can see is hope actually in that. Because why? Because people want something and they see something's bad.
Yeah.
So they're going to go for somebody who maybe is very distasteful to them in many ways,
right?
Because they need they see this big problem.
Yeah.
They see it and they're waking up.
Yeah.
The American giant is becoming awoken. It's like the Japanese when they attacked us. I fear we have awoken the American giant.
Yeah.
Well, it took America to wake up a little bit from that. When that happened, it started turning it on. And it takes a while. Yeah. But eventually it's awake. America is it's funny because they talk about woke. Yeah. America is actually, in proper sense, is awake now.
That's right.
They know what the hell's going on.
It's happening.
And the wheels are turning, man. So like the war machine's starting. Yeah. And we're on the forefront of it with my company. Yeah. And pushing in the technology industry to take leadership and basically make sure that American ideals are preserved and promoted and embraced. So, and we can see all sorts of sign. I mean, in my company, just as an example, I've never marketed to, just as a case in point, I've never marketed to West Point people. I have 5 West Point people in our company, all from different types of companies within the tech industry that have moved and joined our company. Yeah. We have people from Tesla, all West Point, Tesla, Uber, Google Ventures. Amazing. Yeah. It's crazy. And Amazon as well. Yeah. So that were at these cutting edge tech companies that I think realized, wait, hold on, I risked my life, did far more than I personally have ever done. These guys have done, right? Because they actually put their life at risk for American freedoms and stuff. But so I have a lot of respect for them. But so they have actually put it all on the line, and they're thinking, I'm at this company that's fighting against what I almost risked my life for. Yeah. They're probably thinking this, and they're selecting into a company like mine and moving and joining us. And these guys are also extremely high caliber because we only hire elite people in our company. So, but we've never marketed to them, and they're joining our company, and we're getting a lot of other folks like this. Yeah. And exciting. They're not all a bunch of Christians either. A lot of our folks coming in, we have definitely Christians, but we also have guys who are like agnostic. I have one guy he says he's an anarchist actually, but anyways, I think he thinks I'm one as well, but I told him I'm not that extreme, man. Yeah. Like, I am libertarian oriented, but you're crazy, man. Yeah. But he wants to be in a company that is, allows him to just be himself. Right. And like that's why he's with us, and he sees the problem of this intolerance because he was from one of the Soviet countries. So he knows. Yeah, so he sees what happens, and his family moved out of that. And he's excellent at tech, but he doesn't want that to happen. He's wanting to be part of creating something like that. So there's tons of hope out there, is what I'd say, and I think the game has just started, and we're gonna crush him, man. We will win. One of our my motto in the company is find a way or make one. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we will find a way or make one. Yeah. So, and right now we're making one on the tech side because we didn't really have a way out on the West Coast. So we're making one out of Texas and creating new leadership.
Man, I love that response. Thanks so much, Peter Rex, for being here with
thank
us,
you,
for everything
Kevin.
you're
I
doing.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you for all you do and Heritage as well.
It's a privilege. We'll do it together.
Yep.
Well, folks, hope you enjoy that conversation with Peter Rex. We will be back next time, probably with a guest who doesn't quite have Pete's passion, because that's hard to match, but someone who is an equally good patriot. Take care.